I told myself that I was going to stop making videos like this. That there was too many rambles, too many times where I just didn't know what to say, which leads to a lot of incoherent nonsense. So I was like, you know what, man? When I finish something that I really like, and I can't put my thoughts together, we'll hold off on that. No more recording on the night of. I can't do it. I can't do it, man. Yo. Dudes and dudettes. I have been in the world of Clair Obscur, Expedition 33, since Thursday morning at 6 a.m. I set my alarm clock early that day so I can get some game time before I had to go get something done, even though it was a day off that I specifically made, just in case I either wanted to play some Oblivion or some Expedition 33. It was gonna be a rest day because the rest of the week had been so chaotic. I forgot that One Piece came out that day. That's how hooked. That's how locked in I was to Expedition 33 on the first day. And then that continued on Friday. And then it continued again on Saturday. And I sit here Sunday night at midnight, having just rolled credits, to tell you here today that my mind is an enigma right now. As Patrick said, the inner machinations of my mind are an enigma. And I can't I'm attempting to come on here to put some type of thought, some type of processing, some type of thing that I just need to get out, man. I need to get this out, bro, because I have been with this game for the last 4 days. And it's been so good that it's gotta talk about it, man. I have to, yo. If you don't know what this game is, they showed it off for the first time, I believe it was last year, at an Xbox showcase. And the first time I saw it, I was like, yo, this looks super, super dope. I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait for this to drop. It had the Super Mario RPG and Paper Mario elements where you have to like match the timing of the attacks. Didn't know it at the time, or maybe I did, but I just forgot about it, that you would have to parry and dodge like you do in like a Sekiro or something. I was like, yo, man. And of course, the way the game looked, the way the tone felt, I was like, yo, I definitely one of my most anticipated titles whenever it ends up dropping, right? And so this week arrived. My excitement was extremely high. But nothing could have prepared me, man. Nothing could have prepared me for just how much I would enjoy this game, man. Shout out to the individuals over at Sandfall Interactive. I had a team, I believe, that was 33 individuals that put this thing together, man. Because my flipping goodness, this game had me locked in, man. It gave me the same itch, the desire to want to come back and play it for gameplay's sake, as I was when I was super locked in to like Elden Ring or Breath of the Wild, where I was like, I can't wait to come back and just be in this world and explore it, man. Just go around and explore. Rebirth last year was another one. I just could not get enough of just playing it, man. I just wanted to play it. So you give me that mixed in with a story that touched upon topics that are so incredibly important to me, so incredibly personal to me. And that mixture of elements created what you're seeing here before you right now, which is an individual that is trying to process what it is that I just experienced in this however many hour-long journey that it was to have my first playthrough, because there's no doubt in my mind I'm going back for New Game Plus, because I gotta see everything that I missed. And I tried my hardest in that final stretch there to experience as much of the side content as possible before finishing the game, because I was loving it that much, right? But I understand there's still quite a bit that I need to explore within the New Game Plus. And so I don't have the full picture of things. But just based on what has been painted for me thus far, based on the painting that I have before me, this game was special, man. There's certain things that you can only feel. You know, when you finish something that truly resonated with you, you have that thing inside of you. You have that feeling, that hole, where you just want to stare at the wall and process existence. That's what this game just gave me with its ending, man. And I finished. Well, I'm not sure if I should say that, because that could be considered a spoiler. But we'll just say that I upon finishing the ending, I was just so at a loss for words that I don't know, man. I just like, bro. But on a serious note, man, since we're still in the spoiler-free section before I head over into the Spoilercast section of this video, even if you're not a fan of turn-based JRPGs, which I know there's probably quite a few of you that watch this channel that aren't into the things that I cover on the gaming side of things, like obviously Trails being the main series I cover from the video game standpoint, which is definitely turn-based and has transitioned more to being like more action turn-based in recent memory. But for like my love of Metaphor last year, or just recently playing like Tales of Grace's F, or like any of these other turn-based games, right? I know there's an audience of individuals that's not the game for them, and I completely understand that, right? But I think even if turn-based games do not match with your tastes, I would at the very least say to give this game a shot, because playing this game and mastering the enemy attack patterns and boss attack patterns gives me a similar high as playing something like Dark Souls or an Elden Ring or a Sekiro does, in regards to mastering when to dodge, mastering when to parry, mastering when exactly to hit that iframe so that, you know, when the attack comes, I'm in the like slow more and I can punish, right? While at the same time having the party system that makes JRPG so much fun to play, right? And taking advantage of enemy weaknesses, and when they're staggered, you go up and like slow more and go ham. It's like a best of both worlds that creates for such an addicting gameplay loop that just made me want to keep getting into combat so that I can continue to master the combat and get the most out of my characters. And so even if you're not into games for the potential stories that could be told there, or even if you don't like turn-based games outside of stuff like Pokemon, which I'm sure is like what a lot of individuals, even if you're not into turn-based games, feels like almost everyone plays Pokemon, I would still at the very least give this one a shot, especially if you have Game Pass, because it's a free download on there. Because the gameplay of this game truly is, at least for me, it had me locked in, man. I was hooked. I was hooked, bro. I could not stop playing the game. You know, so and a lot of that has to do with that side of it, right? And so, like I said, even if you don't you don't care about stories in video games, you don't care about any of that. If you just want a game that will like test your ability and really lock you into maybe want to do a challenge and seeing how many bosses you can beat, like no hit runs, things of that nature, bro, there's a lot of potential for that in this game, man. So many different enemies, so many different bosses that will, if you're not on top of your game, if you are not locked in, they can handle you. You know, they can handle you now, and it's so much fun in that regard, as well as the exploration aspect of it and things of that nature. But if you just like games for that, I would even recommend that this game as like just for that. But if you're also into the storytelling side of games and you appreciate narrative in games on top of that, then man, I would at the very least say to give this one a shot, because like I said, there's certain things that are explored here that just hit so personally. The characters that are here, the character dynamics that are here within the party members, it just hit, man. It just hit, and I'll tell you, it real deal felt like I was playing. If I took something from the PlayStation 1 era and like a game idea that was scrapped in like 1998 or 1999, and this studio was like trying to make this game from like 1999 until now, and then they took a PS1 game from that era and released it on modern day consoles. That is what this feels like. And I mean that in the most... I grew up with the PS1 and thus look back on that console so fondly. Same thing with the PS2, same thing with like anything from the 64, whatever. That it just gave me a feeling, man, that I can't properly describe. You know what I'm saying? It felt like that. So much so, the game itself feels like it's split into 3 discs. like one of those classic JRPGs, right? And so once again, man, because I'm about to get into the spoiler section, if you rock with these types of games, fairly give it a shot. My rating for this is Goat Raw Fire Peak, man. Easily. Brother. Ah! Come on! Come on, man! I rock with this junk. It was heat. And so, try it out. I'm about to go ham. This is your last warning if you have not played this game. 3, 2, 1. Flagnards. Bro. Listen, man. When I finished Final Fantasy VI a few years ago, right before COVID, I got extremely sick. And I wanted to play something because I was stuck in bed for a couple of weeks. And so I started playing Final Fantasy VI, and I gained a real appreciation for side content in the third act of a video game, thanks to Final Fantasy VI. And there was this one particular piece of side content in that game that has you entering a painting, right? And I was like, man, that's such a cool concept. I would love to see something like that being explored on a large scale. Obviously, I have a lot of love for Super Mario 64. Castlevania Symphony of the Night has a certain elements like that as well, right? As I'm sure other things that are slipping my mind right now, because like I said, I just finished this game. But the very first thing I thought of when this game started really going into what it was actually trying to say was the side content section of Final Fantasy VI. And in particular, that whenever you enter the painting. Because it stood out to me as such a brilliant piece of potential missable material that really lands exactly what makes something like an FF6 so special. And I think that is exactly how I feel about this game in regards to everything that it has to offer. And in particular, I got what I wanted. A game that explores what it would be like to enter the canvas of an artist and explore that world and those characters and what would happen if that world was in the hands of a dysfunctional family like a human Nekoro Nakukoro ni. What would happen if the painters that created this world had gone through such a tragic event that they then utilized the world and the characters that inhabit that world as a way to escape, as a way to get over that grief. And I was like, oh my gosh, they're cooking here, man. And I was like, bro, because when the game started, I immediately was like, yo, this reminds me of so many of my favorite stories that start you off in something that you're used to, you're accustomed to seeing. It's a bit of the familiar and the strange, right? So the entirety of Act 1, when you're accompanying Gustav and seeing it through his perspective, shout out to Gustav, by the way, man, what an awesome protagonist. But you're following his journey up until the end of Act 1. I was, at that point, seeing potential things that could be explored here, but I was so locked into the journey, I just wanted to see where everything was going to go. Especially with how like Renoir had been showcased earlier on in the game, the stuff potentially going down with Mael and Lune, and so many different things, right? Where I didn't know where it was all going, but there was progress. There was progress, and I was like, okay, this is exciting. We're going from this place to this place to this place to this place. I was like, yo, let's go, man. It truly, you felt that sense of progression. That sense of progression really made me want to keep going. But when you reach the end of Act 1, because listen, man, I love the Gestural Village, and that was the waters, specifically the music that plays during the waters was awesome. And we got Mael as a party member, which is probably my favorite character in the game. It's tough because I love so many of these characters. But from a storytelling perspective, it really was whenever we started exploring the manor for the first time that I was like, this is interesting. I wonder what we're building here, right? And of course, we know that would become. But I was like, man, what are the flying flatters that we're doing continuously returning to this manor? Because like I said, I was doing a lot of side content, and we kept unlocking more doors in the manor. And I was like, what is so important about this flipping manor, man? And we first see that with the curator and Mael. And in that particular sequence there at the in there. But I guess before I get into that, the prologue of this game does a brilliant job of setting the tone for what we could expect here. And I always think back to one of my favorite prologues in a game. Obviously, there's so many that we could talk about here. But something that immediately captures the tone of what you could expect from the game, even from the main menu, is what I've always appreciated from Kingdom Hearts 1. As like, yes, this is a game with Disney characters. Yes, this is a game that you're going to get up to a bunch of shenanigans. But there is a somber undertone here that is just felt. Like you can't describe it, you just feel it. And so when you hear the first few notes of Dearly Beloved, whether you've been with KH for your entire life or you just recently got into it, those notes hit because it connects with something deep inside that you really can't even begin to describe. And from the moment that this game's prologue starts, I felt that same type of feel, something I could not explain, this melancholy that it just overwhelmed me. So when you're following Gustav, you're following Mile, and eventually the stuff with Sophie and the Gamage, and you're like, so all the mysteries, and then you're starting to figure out exactly what these expeditions are. We have to go take down the Paintress, all of that, right? But then when you see what the Gamage actually is, and you're already starting to see a few payoffs to mysteries while also continuing to build on even more mysteries in regards to what this world actually is, and in particular, what's going to take place with these characters, and are we even going to get out of this alive? No one's ever survived this before. What kind of ending are we going for? All these things are set up within that brilliant prologue, and it's exceptional. It as a huge BioShock fan, it really reminded me of that as well, in terms of tone, in terms of aesthetic. The game obviously is most certainly going for like that painted atmosphere, something like a Bloodborne, throughout the course of the entire thing. But in particular in the beginning there, it really reminded me of like BioShock, and I was like, let's flip and go. But then once you leave there and you go into the first island, and you get a taste for not just how the gameplay loop's going to be. Once you get Lune into the squad and you start moving with Gustav and Lune, you also start to see a few of the things this game wants to explore, which is its main central overarching thing that is within every single aspect of the game, which is grief, and how the characters deal with grief, how the characters have to deal with loss. And that goes into the side quests, that goes into each individual island that I visited, that goes into each individual character, whether they lose something in real time or they lost something in the past. They all have to deal with it and continue to deal with it. And I just think that is so incredibly beautiful. As someone who has seen what could happen when you're in the middle of going through something and you write a story based on what you are currently feeling and how personal that can feel, how dangerous that can feel, but more importantly, how it becomes then very difficult to disassociate that you were going through at the time from what you then put onto the page. And this game explores that, because not only are the characters dealing with that on the outside, the characters within the canvas are also dealing with this as well. It's inescapable, whether it's in fiction or reality. And so you already start getting hits and pieces of that, even as early on as the Lune and Gustav stuff. But once Milo joins the party, and then when CL, shout out to CL, one of my favorite party members to use. I think overall, I loved using all of them. I kept them in constant rotation, every single party member in rotation. But I think overall, the character I used the most was Milo, because of that virtuoso stance, which is absolutely insane. But I had so much. CL I used a ton. I mean, those just crazy damage, crazy damage. And shout out to Monoko as well, man, the boy, right? But yes, you get Seal, you get the really cool tournament, which is like, I have to get that in some way to perform in most, or I should say some of the RPGs. I just love the tournament setting, man. It's just, it comes with the with the territory, right? At least for me. Yeah, so many of my favorite things have tournaments, or indoor coliseums, whatever the case may be, right? So that was truly dope, and I was like, okay, I'm really rocking with this. But once you continue after that, and you get towards the end of Act 1 and things are really, you see where we're headed. Every time we go back to camp, we're seeing how the characters and their dynamics are moving and progressing forward. But you see this relationship that has been present from the very beginning of the game, but is now really hitting home in regards to a adopted brother-sister dynamic between Mael and Gustav that feels also like a father-daughter dynamic as well. And obviously it's setting the table for what's to come later, but even in the moment, it felt incredibly special because you understood that both characters, especially with what they were going through in that particular situation, really needed to be there for each other. And it causes for once you get the end of Act 1 and you have that moment there. Because listen, man, that lamp fight with the lamp master or whatever flying flag nerds that boss, I've died to that boss like 15 times. When I beat that boss, I was like, yo, I need some air, man. So when Renoir shows up right after, I was like, what in the flying flag nerds is going on right now? You get the 1v1, he won't go down. I was like, oh my god, it's flipping Crisis Core. It's Crisis Core. No matter what I do, it's inevitable. And so then it takes a life of its own. And after that, the death flags that have been present throughout the entire game in regards to Gustav, so many different situations with him up until that point in the game let us know that maybe by the end of the game, he would die. End of Act 1. End of Act 1. That's what really caught me off guard. I had a feeling that Gustav would die by the end of the game. Not in Act 1, man. Not in that early. First look at Verso. Renoir comes in and takes out Gustav. I was so shook because I loved Gustav. I really did. But in particular, I was really enjoying where the dynamic with him and Mael was going, dude. Like, it was really special. And that last interaction they had with the rocks and throwing the rocks at the painters, I was like, oh man, like, this is great. And I was like, what is gonna happen now? Are we doing like a sort of thing of where she's going to take everything that Gustav was going for and is not going to apply to herself? And are we not going to get a revenge story? Like, what's going to happen? And so when Verso becomes the main part of the party after that, it felt weird at first. I was like, so this dude from the first expedition is now going to be a part of our squad, and he's going to attempt to start these new relationships with this brand new expedition, even though he's dealing with the grief and loss of all of the other previous expeditions he's tried to help before in the past. And so I like the setup there, but I was iffy on whether it was actually going to work because of how much I enjoyed Gustav, right? I was like, I don't know if I like this yet or not. And so what really clicked for me, two things. Number one was when Miles sits down to write in Gustav's journal, which throughout the entire course of the game up until that point, Gustav had been writing for his apprentices that he left back in Lumiere, right? So I was like, okay, this is going to really hit by the time we get to the end of the game. And mother flaggers. Then Miles is the one who does that after that. I was like, okay, so I see where we're going with that, with the like inheriting will and carrying the torch. So I was like, okay, I can see where we're going with this. But bro, when Verso first had his interactions with Ciel, Lune, and then for me, the one that really kicked the door open was Esquier and then Monaco. Because the Esquier one had me like, man, what are we cooking here? Like, just in regards to characters, not even in regards to story, just in regards to characters. Like, I was really liking what they were going for with the Verso and Esquier dynamic, as individuals who've known each other for a very long time. And then the Monaco one, man, where I was like, oh, like I rock with this dynamic, dude. Like a friendship that's lasted for so many years, but it's also a rivalry. I was like, yes, man. And so once we started setting into that and dealing with how Verso is trying to balance his old friendships and relationships and also what's going on with the family, right, alongside this new thing that is blossoming with the characters that he's now on this journey with, was something that I was like immediately endeared to after seeing those interactions, where I was like, okay, I'm in for it now. And obviously I love using Verso in combat, so it was easy to win me over there. But in regards to interpersonal party dynamics, that was the thing where I was like, I don't know if this is gonna work, man. Like I really loved Gustav, but it ended up really, really working. Another major thing that truly started just twisting my brain was the first time that we started getting Mael's little black and white nightmare sequences, because that's when we really started to see what the creators were going for with this story. The more that we started getting into the Alicia thing, the more we started getting into the Renoir thing, and in particular through Miles' perspective, because immediately you understood this character is special to them for some reason, and she's the only one who can do certain things, the only one that can move within that world, the only one that can see those two other characters. So immediately, like, what in the flying flatters is going on with Mile? And it's a mystery that continues to intrigue me, at the very least, where I couldn't wait to find out. And so when you eventually do get to the heart of the paintress, when you get to the manor once again, and you have to box Renoir again, which all the times we had to box him, man, it was like every time it was more toxic than the last in regards to the difficulty. But by the time you finish that battle, and actually before that, the party gets split up, and the one side is starting to question Verso and what he knows and what he's hiding from the rest of the party. And so you're like, flying flatter is going on there. And of course he's with Miles, so me as the viewer, I'm like, what is going on? What are we cooking here? Like, have we been led astray? What's going on? And so obviously you get there to the culmination point, and we find out that Verso's been hiding the information that Renoir is actually his father, as well as Alicia with it being the sister. And so, but we keep having this interaction between Mael and Alicia, and we clearly see that they both have a very similar a look, right? Like, obviously one is wearing the mask and has the white hair, but it just in terms of the way that they look very similar, very, very similar. But then I in the back of my head, I was like, okay, Gustav, Renoir, and Verso also look kind of similar. So I was like, maybe I'm just like tripping, right? Maybe it's just character designs that look similar. But no, man, I actually was on the money. You know what I'm saying? And so as we continue through that, I was like, what in the flying flagners is going on with Alicia and Maya? So then we continue on through the game. And let me tell you, bro, because I started getting really attached to the characters by the time we reached the paintress, man. I didn't want it to end. I thought that was going to be the end of the game. So I was already starting to do side content because I did not want to say goodbye to these characters. But one thing kept nagging at me in the back of my head. You don't have the final gradient counter, or the final gradient ability for any of these characters. So I was like, is that something that's exclusive for New Game Plus? is that something that is going to, like, I wasn't able to max out any of the relationship levels at that time. Wasn't able to get any of their final abilities for the gradient. So I was like, something felt weird, something felt off, it felt incomplete. And so I was like, maybe that's their intention, to make it feel like it's incomplete, similar to how other expeditions before had always failed, right? Right before being able to make it, they failed, right? So I was like, maybe that's what they're trying to do with this. And I thought it was an intentional thing, that you don't get the final gradient, that you don't max up the relationships, because it's gonna feel incomplete. Whether you win or you lose against the Patriots, it's gonna feel incomplete. So I was like, okay, I can see maybe what they're going for with this. It's because the game wasn't gonna end there, man. Dude, when you reach the monolith, first of all, when you fight Renoir again, and the curator shows up, you're like, what is going on? What is going on, man? Mile and the curator, get Renoir out of there. And I was like, hold on, bro. What does all this mean? Who is the curator? The man has been upgrading my materials this whole time, and we just don't know who he is. Oh, man. So many epic boss fights to this point. But the Paintress was probably my favorite, man. I think still, even at the end of the game, I think the Paintress still overall, as like a concept, as an idea, and as a battle in of itself, was such a cool boss battle. But because I thought that was the end, I was so locked in, man. I was like, yo, we are here. We are here, son. And so I did everything that I possibly could to have the most fun possible in that boss battle, just in case I ended up losing my party members. And lo and behold, it was all leading towards something that continued to still feel incomplete. And I was like, maybe this is what the author's intentions was. So you continue to get some more build towards the bigger picture, towards the dynamic between the Paintress and Renoir, Alina and Renoir, and it's like, and then Verso, and like, bro. So when it shows them going back to Lumiere, and it feels like it's the end, a part of me was like, I was so happy that we won. And was already like, yeah, what an amazing adventure and journey this was. But there was just something that felt off. And I couldn't put my finger on it. And then everyone starts gomashing. And bro, I have goosebumps. Because all it took was Verso to go down to his letter, dog. Every hair in the back of my neck is standing. Verso starts reading the letter from Alicia. And as he's reading the letter, it's like everything starts to click. Every line makes something else click. And it's just bzzzt, bzzzt, bzzzt. And eventually, everyone starts gomashing. And the flying flag starts going on. Is this how the game ends? Act 3. Epilogue. Alicia. When I saw that, bro, like I said, because I've been going through all these emotions, because I've been going through all of these feelings, and I did not want to say goodbye to these characters, when they all gomashed, I was so heartbroken. I was like, well, if the credits start rolling here, I don't know what I'm gonna do. So when it said epilogue, Alicia, and you're back at the manor, I was like, boy, what are we cooking? I was like, yo, man, what are we cooking? When she walked over to the room with the canvases. My jaw, my brain, everything that you see here lost function. It ceased to function. Because immediately my mind, all of it snapped together like, this is the real world. The world, everything that they've been building towards this entire game, the reason why we always came back to the manor, the reason why so many of the things within this world felt so fantastical, and why the painters exist, why the idea of painting and the gommage and all of that, all immediately snapped at that moment. And I was like, dude, they're touching upon creation here. They're touching upon the beauty and yet also the negative aspects, the what makes creation such an integral part of being a human, while at the same time something that can also lead to the darkest aspects of it as well. I was like, bro, what are we doing here? I was like, what are we cooking with this game right now? And so when we go back into the flipping canvas, bro, after having seen all that and getting the reveals, and Verso has been dead, and the Verso that we know is just a Verso made out of memories, and you're like, what in the world is going on? Then that just says Act 3, Maya, and she's rocking the Alicia White-haired cut and the sickest sword in the game, man, with the shield ability that is so OP. Maya was already OP before that. After that, it wasn't even close. It wasn't even close, man. It reminded me so much of whenever I finished my first RPG, which was FF7, right? And going through disc 2 of that, and after disc 1, I was like, this is the greatest thing I've ever experienced. Then you finish disc 2, and you're like, this is still the greatest thing I've ever experienced. And then you go into disc 3, and you just get the opportunity to really explore the entire world before the final battle. And that's exactly what this game felt like. Disc 1, disc 2, and now we're in disc 3 with Maya. And I was like, okay, before I do this final battle, I want to do all this side content, because I know there's something out there similar to whenever I played FF6 or my favorite side content in recent years, like the Yakuza games or the Trails games, that before the end of the game, there's always some really rich side content that's going to enrich the overall experience. And so especially since SKA got the flying ability, I was like, yes, let's go. Let's just go around in this quote-unquote airship and, try to find what is in this world. And that's exactly what I did, because I did not want to say goodbye to these characters. And so when I knew the end was on the horizon, I was like, I'm going to try to extend this as much as possible. Because if we truly have to say goodbye to the characters, as it's been hinting throughout the course of the entire game, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it, man. And so I spent an entire day and a half just side content, trying to do as much of it as possible. And I found out that this is where I could max out all the relationships. This is where I found their side stories, which, by the way, the side story for almost all of the characters ended up elevating how I felt about the characters in the end. Monaco's with trying to bring back his son, amazing stuff. Having to face the chief, amazing stuff. CL's was brilliant, tying back together the fact that she didn't know how to swim or was afraid of swimming, bringing it back to Eski and seeing that Eski talking about the second time that they'd ever met, and the first time being that he saved her right whenever she attempted to take her own life in the middle of grieving her husband, and obviously the child as well, right? And so that was some incredible content there as well, and some really phenomenal character work between both her and Verso. And then we got some stuff with Lune and her family, and going back to one of my favorite arenas in the entire game, which was the where her stuff was with like the dancers and the ballet and all that stuff was awesome. It was super, super cool. Just aesthetic over there. But dude, I still can't. I don't know if this was optional or not, because I don't know what would have happened had I not tried to do all the side content. But Mael's final thing to reach level 6 before you get like the final conversation for level 7 is she asks if we can go to the top of the monolith and another side of it to go meet Alicia. And so you go up and you explore this really cool area. And when you get to the top, you're treated to one of the most incredible sequences in the game until that point, where she's face to face with herself. And you actually have to fight her in combat and overcome her in combat. And just seeing what was at stake between those two characters, what she wanted, what Verso wanted, and how that played out. I was like, I can't believe this is optional. It feels like it's so integral, but it's a part of that, similar to the side content in other games that really enrich those experiences, even though they are optional. Exact same thing here, man, where it's those optional things that you find on the journey, those detours that end up making the entire thing just that much more special. And so when I reached that section with Alicia and Milo, I was like, no, this is incredible. You're telling me this is a piece of side content? Couldn't believe it. Could not believe it, man. And that goes for all the other things that I did even before that, which was like the super cool other tournament that there was, like this gauntlet, where I fought all the other individuals I fought in the tournament, except this time in a much more difficult way, where they were much, much stronger. Another one was like an endless tower. Another one where we would just go into different areas and find pieces of music or clothing, right? Or whatever it is. It was just fun to explore and go around with the characters on what felt like our final hoorah. The world's greatest expedition, as SKA called it. Like, this is going to be our final opportunity. And I love how the game really made it feel that way before you go over to fight Renoir. So I truly took advantage of that. I did not want to say goodbye to these characters. And so I went and I did as much side content as possible. And the moment that I finished Lune's final thing, which was the last thing that I did, maxing out all of their stuff so I can get their level 3 gradient attacks, I was like, now I'm ready. Now it's time. All of these characters have had some incredible moments. That final sequence for all of them, Monaco and Verso with CL, Verso with Lune, Verso with Miles was phenomenal because of the conflict that was there. With Eskie, all of those level 7s were special in very different ways, and I appreciated them so much, especially since I experienced them back to back to back. It was just, it really felt like the final hoorah, the final piece of the puzzle I needed before embarking on that journey back to Lumiere. And so when I went back to Lumiere, ready to take on the final piece of the adventure, what is that this game wants a lasting impression to be? I'm already in awe of the narrative. I'm already in awe of the gameplay. I'm in awe of what they're going for as a creator, of talking about fantasy and fiction and how we attempt to hide ourselves within these things so that we don't have to confront the realities before us, especially when it comes to something as sensible as grief, but could even be something as small as having a bad day and wanting to escape with our favorite characters, whether it's something that we created or something that somebody else created, right? And It's such an interesting thing to explore within a world like this. And so I could not wait to see how a game with so many mysteries and so many things that it was going for would wrap up. And of course, it ends up exactly where it started. In Lumiere, as you and the party go in and fight so many enemies that you have throughout the course of the entire game. It's a little stronger this time. And then you fight Renoir. And you're presented with the final quote-unquote battle of the game, which is the curator in Renoir, as he brings out all the other Axons. Which, by the way, going back to the Axons, it's so cool that Alicia and Mile fight in there. It was the last Axon fight, which is why I'm like, I don't know if that was optional or not, because it was like, oh, it's crazy to me. It reminded me of the weapons, right? Like ruby weapon, emerald weapon, and stuff like that. But when I was fighting Renoir, I couldn't help but think back to Final Fantasy IX and my absolute love for how that game is framed through a theatrical point of view, a theatrical frame. The way the characters act, their dialogue, their relationships, the way they speak, is all through that lens of theater, from beginning to end. It's something that I just absolutely love about that game. Metaphor last year, a very similar way in regards to a fantasy novel. It's the frame through which we view that entire game through is a fantasy novel. And what I was so fascinated by in regards to this game is, especially when we started getting into the main meat of the narrative, everything was framed through a painting and what that means. And the outside of a painting, the core of a painting, the inside of a painting, the painters, and this mysterious writers group, which I'm still fascinated by. But everything was framed by the idea and concept of a painting. And so that was all over that final boss fight, which just caused it to be so cool from an aesthetic standpoint. But when you finish the boss fight, and I'm sitting there wondering, what's gonna happen now? Because obviously Renoir is in conflict with... the entire family's in conflict with each other. But Renoir is the one who's trying to specifically stop Mile from doing what she's about to do. So when Verso starts acting the way that he started acting there at the end, once again, just like at the end of Act 2, I was like, what are we doing here? Because I thought we were all part of the same mindset. I was like, even though they had that conflict in the final bonding event, I have to call it that as a Trails fan, between the two characters, Mile and Verso, I was like, no, we're all on the same page right now. We're all on the same page. We understand what we got to do. So when we had that final piece of conflict there, even after Renoir was defeated, I was like, what in the flying Flagnars is this game going for? Like, so many things that were said within that final dialogue exchange. I was like, dude, this game is cooking, right? Like, so many things to think about, so many things to ponder about, so many things that the game has obviously been going for. But man, when Verso enters the painting, and he's sitting there in front of the boy, this same boy that we'd seen throughout the course of the entire game, and he's sitting there painting, and you get the dialogue option to tell him to stop painting. I was just sitting, I was like, what are we doing with this? What are we cooking? Mile pops out, stops him, and then you have to make a decision. Do you want to fight? Because they both get in front of each other. Mile brings out her sword. So does Verso. And you're like, mother of Flagnars. Then you have to make a decision. Do you go with Mile? Or do you go with Verso? Let me tell you something, man. Just like I'd been talking about this entire video up until this point, I did not want to say goodbye to these characters. I was all on board with picking Mile right there and saying, you know what? I don't want to say goodbye. I want to live in this dream world with these characters. Because number one, it'll probably lead me to New Game Plus. But number two, I just love these characters too much, man. I don't want to say goodbye. I was a part of that disillusion. I was a part of the individuals that did not want to say goodbye, that wanted to live within that happy memory forever, even if it cost the characters their happiness. And I was going to choose that wholeheartedly. But one of my closest friends, who finished the game before me, told me in no context whatsoever, choose Verso when the time comes. And lo and behold, when I got the option, I had to go with whether I wanted to do what I wanted to do more than anyone else, which is exactly what Lune spoke about just a little before that. Like, the only voices we should listen to are the ones in our head. And then you have another thing that directly counteracts that in the other individuals around us that influence us so much. So I remember what he said. And I've known him for so many years where I was like, if he told me to choose that in this moment, it's gotta be for a reason. And I thought back to Verso. I thought back to what he was going for. I thought back to him in front of the dude who's been painting this entire time, the little boy. How the little boy didn't want to paint anymore. And how Verso just wanted this pain to stop. How difficult it is to move on. I knew choosing Verso would mean I would have to say goodbye. But ultimately, that's exactly what I had to do. And I paced around my room, man. I didn't know what to do. But I ultimately chose Verso. And you have that incredible exchange. And then Mile, in your hands, yells that she does not want to say goodbye to you like this again. And then directly after that, Verso then has to say goodbye to SKA and Monaco, two individuals who have been with him for so long. Friends of both the real Verso that died and now this new Verso. And the SKA one really, really hit for me because in his final bonding event with Verso, Verso asked him if he valued him any differently than the real Verso. And SK tells him, no, because you're you and he's him. I love both of you for very different reasons, but because you're both you. And so when he goes up to the two individuals that he's been with for so long, who truly understood his whole dilemma in this entire situation, and told them, I'm gonna miss y'all. Oh man. When CL walked through that painting and she started washing away, then Lune, understanding, sits down and watches it all. And I immediately thought back to her final bonding event where she talked about Mael showing her pieces of the outside world, because remember, these characters had just been told the fact that there is an outside world that is in control of what they were currently, of the world that they were in. And I was just so incredibly fascinated by that line when she said, I'm looking forward to seeing that painting that Mile makes of what the outside world looks like. An insatiable curiosity, even for things that we cannot possibly begin to understand. And it really goes into the idea of creation. It even goes into the idea of like creation myths and all the different stories that have come around that have become the basis for so many different things right over the years, whether it be fictional or basis of religions or things of that nature that could be under that same umbrella. And so when Lune is there in that moment, she's the one that accepts what's currently going on and sits down and observes as Verso goes up to the little boy. And we find out that little boy was actually the real Verso. The piece of his soul that was still within the canvas that they were trying to protect, that Mile was trying to protect at all costs. And Verso takes his hand and they disappear as we go back to the real world. And in front of Verso's grave, we see that even though they are still grieving, the family that was broken apart by that death, by that terrible tragedy, is now grieving together in front of the grave. And I'm sure they will go through a lot of obstacles, but they all went through all these things together. And Mile in particular, holding Esquier, will have to push forward as well. And so she looks up in the incredible final shot of everyone that we've known on this journey as they all disappear while saying goodbye. Bro, I was a mess, man. I was like, no, man, not the squad, bro. As it then rolls to credits. Obviously, the moment I finished the credits, I had to see what Miles' ending was like. Because like I said, that was the one I was going to choose. That was the one that I felt it in my soul. Like, I don't want to say goodbye to these characters, and I was doing everything possible not to. Especially with the dream at the end that I could see Gustav again, that I could bring happiness to CL's life, I bring her husband back, and all of the previous expeditioners, and we get the ending. We see them all in a theater. In Miles' ending. And what we see is that even though everything appears to be perfect, something feels off. And it's like, when in this game, if something feels off, it's normally on point. And so once again, I'm getting goosebumps, bro. She looks up and sees Gustav and Sophie, bro. I was immediately like, oh, the squad. CL's with her husband. And I was like, oh, man. They're all still alive. They're still good. But in the back of my head, I'm like, is this really right? Is this really the way things are supposed to be? Maya looks up, and you see Verso about to go play the piano, but he's emotionless. And in that moment, you understand that by choosing this ending, you have trapped these characters forever in this endless cycle. You can't break the cycle. You're just continuing it forever. You're going to continue to live in this disillusion, never allowing yourself to move forward. And so when the ending, with Verso struggling to play the piano, the final shot we see of Mael is her in the very same thing that we saw Renoir trying so hard not to think about or go back to, which was the reality of what the real Alicia was going through. And we see that's exactly what Mael turns into at the end. That would never ever be broken. And she would always remain that way. And I love the way that both endings complement each other to tell the grand scheme of the entire story and the true message that they were going for. A story built around grief, a story built around moving on, but more importantly, a story that goes above and beyond to talk about creation and how we create things that we become attached to, things that we love, experiences that are special to us. And the game poses a question. Those experiences, those memories that we create, even if they are fictional, are they still valuable? When it's time to say goodbye and move on to our world, are those experiences things that we could take with us? The things that we learn within the things that we experience, that we create, the characters we meet, are those things that we can also take with us and apply to our real life experiences? The answer is of course. The answer is of course. And it's such a beautiful thing to see how fiction can directly influence reality, but also how reality will always influence the pieces of fiction we create. And ultimately, when I finished watching both endings, when I went through it the first time on my playthrough with the Verso ending, and then when I saw the Mile ending, the overall portrait was completed. And seeing just how committed this game was to the idea of grief and to the idea of loss, and how difficult it is to move forward when you lose something so suddenly. It retroactively makes the idea of the paintress, the idea of the expeditions, the idea of the gomages, the idea of both immortality and death. All of those things and the way they were explored within this story immediately click in a way that I just can't stop thinking about, in a way that I've still yet to fully process, in a way that I just truly, truly appreciated. And so I really, really loved this game, man. I loved playing it. I loved seeing the characters interact with each other. I loved really being a part of their squad, feeling like I was a part of them. And ultimately, the game did a great job of really putting you in these shoes, or at least putting me in the shoes of Mile, so that I would have to ultimately make the decision myself on whether I would want to continue living like this and keep the cycle going, or break it. Really just take it all in and just go through that pain in the moment, but ultimately understand that you need to confront that in order to progress forward. The way that all that was executed at the end, just I was at a loss for words, man. I still am. And I can't believe that this game, as the studio's first game, decided to touch upon a topic that's so incredibly beautiful and special to me like this. unreal, man. I don't know if we'll ever get a sequel. I don't know if we'll ever get DLC. But if this is the completed portrait, the completed painting for this world and its characters, then what a powerful thing to end on. That our memories of these characters, the experiences we've had with them, will live on forever with us. But a piece of our soul will always be left behind in them as well. I look forward to playing this game again from the very beginning and seeing all the things through the lens of now having the completed picture. Because I'm already thinking back to, like I said, the idea of the Gommage, the idea of the Paintress, the idea of expeditions, the idea of this created world outside of their control in a completely different way than I did when I first started playing the game. And I think by the time I finish my second playthrough, I can't wait to really think about all the different things that are within this game. All the different things that they were going for and trying to say. But all in all, I was just so grateful to go on this journey. And before I played this game, as I told y'all in the top 5 of the week, I was in a massive Final Fantasy X mood, which Final Fantasy X, of course, goes into, the idea of dreams never fading, and those memories that you create with those that are special to you, no matter who they are, and no matter whether they're real or not. Those are things that are real to you. Those are things that are very valuable to you. And I couldn't stop thinking about Final Fantasy X in the lead up to this game. And knowing that game was an inspiration to this makes so much of that make sense. This flipping game, man. What a journey. I just really rocked with it, man. It's something that I felt, it's something that I just felt. Like, I really rocked with the characters, man. I rocked with the world, I rocked with the aesthetic. And when all of that comes together also with something that's just hits home, it's like, man, dude. And I'm also looking at it through the lens of another thing that's really special to me in Human Echo, with how to represent like a dysfunction family, and how that leads to the process of creating something that would then become special to someone, and how they have to deal with reality versus something that's not reality, and the trick versus being a part of the magician's like wanting to be fooled by what the magician. It's just so many different elements of stories that I've experienced through the past couple of years that just felt like this was the thing I needed to experience right now, after having read, watched, played all the things that I have in the past few years. And I'm just just grateful, man. Just grateful that I got a chance to play this game. And I definitely look forward to playing it again. But ladies and gentlemen, that is it for me. Shout out Verso. Shout out Mael. Shout out Gustav. Shout out CL. Shout out Lune. Shout out Eskie. Shout out Monaco. What a game, man. I will see y'all next time. Let me know how y'all felt about Expedition 33 in the comment section down below. And until next time, y'all have a good one. And always remember that tomorrow comes. Just as this game told us time and time again. Tomorrow comes. Oh, man. It makes what Gustav and them said so many times about like, when one soldier falls, we continue. Just, see, thinking back to all that stuff just makes the game hit that much harder. The ending hit that much harder, man. God. The Lagnards, bro.